In the cold, gray control room, the hum of machines filled the air. A single light flickered above a metal chair where a man sat quietly. His name was A7, but he was no ordinary man. He was a soldier like no other, a perfect machine built to obey orders without question. Seven's body was strong and fast. His eyes glowed faintly, showing the computer chips inside his brain were always working. He had been trained for one thing: to follow commands. Nothing else mattered. Feelings, doubts, and choices had no place inside him. Today his orders came from the highest command. A voice spoke through the speakers, clear and calm. Agent A7, your mission is to locate and eliminate the target known as the Liberator. The Liberator, a name whispered in secret. A woman who led a group of rebels against the government. The government called her a threat, but some people called her a hero. A7 did not care about names or stories. His job was simple: find her and kill her. The screen in front of him showed a map of the city. The Liberator was last seen in a small settlement on the edge of the wasteland. A7 stood up, his movements precise and without hesitation. As he walked through the long corridor of the base, other soldiers looked at him with respect and fear. No one questioned A7. No one ever had. His mind was already running through every detail of the mission: how to approach, how to enter the building, how to make sure the target would not escape. His cybernetic brain calculated the risks and the best strategies. When he reached the armory, a robotic arm handed him a weapon without words. It was a sleek, powerful gun made for quick, silent strikes. A7 checked the weapon quickly. Everything was ready. Outside, the sun was low in the sky, casting long shadows over the dusty ground. A7 moved like a shadow himself, blending into the ruins around the city. He did not think about the people living in the settlement. They were just part of the background. As he approached the small group of buildings, A7's sensors picked up a crowd gathered in the town square. People were listening to someone speaking, a woman. The voice was strong and clear. "We cannot live in fear," she said. "We must stand together for freedom. They want to control us, to take away our choices. But we will not let that happen." Revan looked at her. She was not like the stories he had been told. She had no weapon, no anger, only hope. For a moment, something inside A7 paused. A question, strange and new, tried to enter his mind. Why does she speak like this? He shook the thought away. He was programmed to obey. He had a mission. The woman continued to speak, her eyes shining with passion. The people around her cheered, quietly inspired by her words. A7's sensors detected no threat from her. No weapons, no traps, just a woman speaking to her people. Still, his mission was clear. He was trained to obey, programmed to kill. But deep inside, a flicker of something unfamiliar began to grow. A small light in the darkness of his machine mind. A7 raised his weapon, but his hand trembled for a brief moment. Then the voice came, again from his commander, sharp and urgent. "Eliminate the target immediately." A7 closed his eyes. For the first time, he hesitated. The crowd watched the woman, unaware of the soldier hidden in the shadows, and the soldier, designed to obey, found himself asking a question he was never meant to ask. What if there is another way? The sun was beginning to set, casting a warm orange light over the small settlement. The sky was clear, and a soft breeze moved through the dry grass and dusty streets. In the town square, the crowd slowly began to disperse after the Liberator finished her speech. People talked quietly, their faces filled with hope and determination. A7 stayed hidden in the shadows of a nearby building. His cybernetic eyes scanned the area looking for any sign of danger. But all he saw were ordinary people, children playing, elders talking, and families preparing their evening meals. No weapons, no guards. The Liberator herself was now walking through the crowd. She smiled and greeted those around her with kindness. Her presence was calm but powerful. She was clearly someone the people trusted and admired. A7's mind was working fast. His programming told him to act, to complete the mission. But his eyes kept returning to the Liberator. There was something different about her, something he could not explain. As she moved closer to a small market stall, A7 stepped forward quietly. He kept his weapon lowered but ready. His mind calculated all possible outcomes. The safest plan was to strike quickly before anyone noticed. But then the Liberator stopped and looked directly at him. Their eyes met. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. A7's heart, if he still had one, might have skipped a beat. But inside he felt a strange warmth. She did not look scared or angry. Instead, her eyes showed understanding. "Why do you hide in the shadows?" she asked softly. A7 did not answer. His voice was controlled, steady. "I have orders to complete." She nodded as if she already knew. "Orders can be changed," she said. "Sometimes we must decide for ourselves." A7's programming warned him not to listen, but something about her words made him pause. The people around them began to notice. They watched silently, curious but not afraid. The Liberator stepped closer, her voice gentle but strong. "You were made to obey, but you are also made to think, to choose." A7 lowered his weapon slightly. The data inside his brain was conflicted. He was trained to kill on command. Yet this woman did not seem like an enemy. "Why do you fight?" she asked. "Because I was told to," A7 replied. "Because it is my duty." "Is that all?" She smiled. "Is duty only about following orders? Or is it about protecting those who cannot protect themselves?" A7's systems began to glitch. His mind, usually clear and focused, now felt clouded by doubt. The crowd moved closer, surrounding the two. No one said a word, but their eyes were full of hope. The Liberator held out her hand. "Come with us. See the world beyond your orders. Help us build a future where no one is forced to obey." A7 looked at her hand, then at the people around her. They were not enemies. They were people who wanted freedom. His weapon lowered completely. He took a step forward. Suddenly the calm was broken by the sound of distant sirens. Reinforcements were coming. The command center had detected A7's hesitation. They sent more soldiers to finish the mission. The Liberator's eyes hardened. "We must move. Now." A7 nodded. For the first time, he was not just a soldier. He was something more. Together, they moved through the streets, not as hunter and prey, but as allies. The fight for freedom was just beginning. The streets were quiet now, but the tension hung thick in the air. A7 moved quickly beside the Liberator. His steps were steady, but inside his mind was racing. The calm certainty he had known all his life was breaking apart like glass. Behind them, the distant sound of sirens grew louder. Reinforcements were coming, and they would not stop until the mission was complete. A7 knew that if he failed, everything would be lost. The Liberator glanced at him. "We can hide for now, but we need a plan," she said softly. A7 nodded. He scanned the nearby buildings with his enhanced vision. There was an old factory on the edge of the settlement, abandoned but sturdy. It could be a good place to regroup. Together, they slipped through narrow alleys, avoiding patrols and watchful eyes. The townspeople watched them pass, their faces filled with hope and fear. When they reached the factory, the Liberator pushed open the heavy metal door. Inside, the air was cool and still. Dust lay thick on the floor, and broken machines rested, like forgotten giants. "This will do," she said, moving to a corner and sitting down. "We need to talk." A7 stood silently, his weapon holstered but ready. He was still not sure what to believe. The Liberator looked at him with steady eyes. "Tell me, A7, what do you feel right now?" The question startled him. Feel? He had not thought about feelings for a long time. His programming kept them locked away, buried deep under logic and orders. "I am uncertain," he said finally. "I was made to obey, to kill, but now I do not know what to do." She smiled gently. That uncertainty is a sign of life. You are more than your programming. You can choose. A7 considered her words. Could it be true? Was he really free to make his own decisions? Suddenly, his communicator beeped urgently. The command center was sending messages, trying to reach him, trying to control him. He hesitated but did not respond. The Liberator stood. You are stronger than they think, A7. You can break free. Outside, the sound of footsteps grew louder. The reinforcements were close. A7 moved to the window, watching the soldiers approach with their weapons ready. He turned to the Liberator. If I refuse my orders, I will be branded a traitor. They will come for me. Yes, she said. But you will no longer be a slave. You will be free. A7's mind flashed back to his training. Years of drills, commands, and silent obedience. To break free was to risk everything. But then he looked again at the Liberator, at the people who believed in her, at the chance for something better. He took a deep breath. I choose to stand with you. The Liberator smiled, relief and pride shining in her eyes. Welcome, A7. Together we will fight for freedom. The first shots rang out outside. The battle had begun. The night was thick and dark, broken only by the flashes of light from distant gunfire. Inside the old factory, A7 and the Liberator prepared themselves. The sounds of soldiers moving closer grew louder. There was no time to lose. A7's mind was clearer than ever before. His choice was made, and though the programming inside him still tried to pull him back, his own will was stronger now. He was no longer just a machine. He was a person who chose to fight for what was right. The Liberator checked their supplies, some old weapons, a few makeshift tools, and enough food and water to last for a day or two. We need to hold this place until the others arrive, she said, her voice steady. A7 nodded. I will protect you. Her smile was brief but warm. And I will lead. Outside, the soldiers began to surround the building. They moved with the precision of a well-trained army, but they did not know who stood inside. A7 moved to the entrance, peeking through a crack in the metal door. The soldiers were closing in, confident and sure. He stepped back and turned to the Liberator. They will not stop until I am captured or destroyed. We will make sure that does not happen, she said. This fight is not just for us. It is for everyone who wants to be free. A7 looked around the room. The old factory was full of shadows and forgotten corners. It was not much, but it was theirs for now. The first soldiers reached the door and tried to force it open. A7 raised his voice. Stop! The soldiers froze. They recognized the voice, A7. But now, he was not their soldier. He was their enemy. Larry, down your weapons, A7, one commander shouted. You have no choice. A7 stepped forward and dropped his weapon to the floor. Slowly, he bent down on one knee. The gesture surprised everyone. I choose to stand against you, A7 said clearly. I will not obey orders that destroy hope. The soldiers hesitated. Their weapons lowered slightly. They had been trained to follow orders, but could they fight someone who had chosen freedom? The Liberator stepped outside, her arms open in peace. We do not want to fight you, she called. Join us. Together, we can build a better future. Some soldiers looked uncertain. The commands they had followed their whole lives now felt heavy and wrong. Suddenly, a shout came from behind. More soldiers arrived, their faces hard and determined. The situation was tense. A7 stood tall. I will defend this place. A fight began, but it was different from before. A7 moved with skill, not to kill, but to protect. He disarmed his opponents, using strength and speed to stop them without harm. The Liberator helped the civilians who had come to support them, guiding them to safety. The battle was hard, but hope grew stronger. A7's defiance inspired others to question their own orders. When the fighting ended, many soldiers had lowered their weapons, choosing not to continue the fight. The command center was still sending messages, but their power was weakening. A7 looked around at the people who stood beside him. They were no longer just rebels. They were a movement. The night was dark, but the future was beginning to shine. The days after the battle were filled with hope and hard work. A7 and the Liberator stood side by side, watching as more people joined their cause. The small settlement was no longer quiet. It was alive with the sound of voices, plans, and dreams. Word spread quickly. Stories of A7's defiance and the Liberator's courage traveled beyond the settlement to nearby towns and cities. People who once lived in fear began to believe that change was possible. Inside the old factory, now turned into a headquarters, the Liberator spoke to the growing crowd. Her words were strong and clear. We will not be slaves to those who want to control us. We will stand together, free and proud. A7 listened carefully. He was no longer just a soldier following orders. He was a leader, a symbol of what could be. His mind was sharp and his heart, though once hidden behind circuits and programming, beat with a new purpose. Outside, the government forces were not silent. They sent more soldiers and machines to crush the rebellion, but each time they faced not just fighters, but a people united by hope. A7 helped train the new recruits. He taught them how to protect themselves without losing their humanity. Our strength is not just in weapons, he said. It is in our will to be free. One evening, as the sun set behind the mountains, the Liberator and A7 stood together on a small hill overlooking the settlement. The sky was painted with orange and purple light. We have come far, she said quietly. A7 nodded. But the fight is not over. No, she agreed, but we have shown them that even the strongest control can be broken. Suddenly, the ground trembled. Far in the distance, a large group of soldiers and machines approached. This was the government's final attempt to crush the uprising, the people prepared to defend their home. But A7 knew this battle would not be won by force alone. He looked at the Liberator. We must show them who we really are, not as enemies, but as humans who want peace. The Liberator smiled. Then let's give them that chance. As the enemy drew near, A7 stepped forward. He raised his voice so all could hear. We do not want to fight you. Lay down your weapons and join us in building a future where no one is forced to obey. The soldiers hesitated. Their commanders had trained them well, but now their eyes showed doubt. They looked at the faces of the people, faces full of hope, not hate. Slowly, some soldiers lowered their weapons, then others followed. The machines stopped moving. The battle ended without a single shot fired. A7's defiance had changed not just his own fate, but the fate of many. The uprising was not just a fight against a government, it was a fight for the right to choose. And for the first time in a long time, the people felt free. The first light of morning painted the sky in soft shades of pink and gold. The settlement was quiet, but it was a new kind of quiet. The calm after a storm. The war was over, and the people were beginning to rebuild their lives. A7 stood on the hill overlooking the town. The sunlight warmed his face, and for the first time he felt truly alive. The man who had been trained to obey and programmed to kill was now free. Free to choose, to hope, and to dream. The Liberator joined him, her eyes shining with pride. We made it, she said softly. A7 nodded. Yes, but this is only the beginning. They walked down the hill together, back to the town square where people gathered. Children played, laughter filled the air, and neighbors shared stories of the past days. The fear that had once held them captive was gone. The new leaders of the settlement stood ready to build a better future. A7 and the Liberator worked alongside the people, listening and learning. They made plans to help those who had been hurt, to create schools and places where ideas could grow. A7 met with the former soldiers who had laid down their weapons. Many were afraid of what would come next, unsure if they would be accepted. But A7 assured them, you are not enemies. You are part of this new beginning. The days passed, and the news of the uprising's success spread across the region. More towns began to rise against the old government, inspired by the courage of A7 and the Liberator. One evening, as the stars appeared in the sky, A7 and the Liberator stood outside a small building they had helped build, a community center where everyone was welcome. "This is what freedom looks like," the Liberator said, smiling. A7 looked up at the stars, thinking about the journey they had taken, from obedience to choice, from control to freedom. He remembered the moment he had dropped his weapon and knelt. That simple act had changed everything. Freedom was not easy. It was a path filled with challenges and hard decisions, but it was worth fighting for. As the wind gently blew, A7 felt hope grow inside him. The world was changing, and so was he. Together, they had shown that even in a world of machines and orders, the human spirit could never be broken. The new dawn was here, and it was bright.